Yes. I would like to apologize because I haven't been precise enough. He's the president of the Renovables Foundation, and now I give the floor to him.
Dear listeners of all generations, solidarity is one of the basic principles of the Catholic social teaching, and it is reflected also in the relationship between the generations. Renovables has been founded as the solidarity initiative of the German Catholics with the people in Central and Eastern Europe. That's the official title. It was founded to help people who had suffered in the former communist countries. I would like to quote the preamble of the statutes of Renovables. The disregard for the dignity of each and every human being, which went on for decades, has mostly destroyed the foundations of society. A new order based on justice shall be established, which guarantees peace between people and nations. To achieve this aim, solidarity is necessary as a means to overcome old and new barriers. That means that solidarity is necessary as a means to overcome old barriers. For me, it means that is the quintessence of our today intergenerational problem. At least concerning the situation in the countries of Central and Eastern Europe, on which I will focus on. Since the development of modern industrial society in the 19th century, which finished the system of several generations living under the same roof, and where grandparents helped to educate their grandchildren, the living and working conditions, working environment has changed, first in Europe and then in North America and then worldwide. In search of work, millions of people have to leave their home countries and their families in order to live, at least temporarily, but mostly even permanently, in foreign countries or cities. For their families, this has serious consequences. As the parents, father or mother, live far away for a long time or permanently, their children are looked after by their grandparents, or even worse, have to care for themselves on their own. You know all and have all read about stories about street children. The elderly people, I mean now not the parents, but the generation above, they are often unable to cope with this situation, especially if they are so old and so ill that they can't take care of themselves, and there is no public or communal assistance. But also their children suffer. When parents permanently or temporarily are absent, and when the child care in the region is insufficient or not existing. If we look at the so-called Third World in Asia, Africa and Latin America, we see that this is a worldwide phenomenon that concerns hundreds of million people. But, and that's the point I want to make, it exists also and even in Europe, to something I want to point especially. I would like to bring another aspect up that damages the intergenerational cooperation, especially in the First World and then notably in old Europe, that has literally grown old within only 2 generations. Though birth rate is declining worldwide, the demographic change in the countries of Central, Eastern and Southeastern Europe, where Renovables is involved, becomes noticeable much faster than in other parts of the world. In these countries, where the national economies often haven't caught up with the modern times, the young generation is shrinking more and more. So in future, there wouldn't be enough young adults to take care of the elderly generation, or even to express their solidarity with them. I would like to tell you a real story as an example for the reach of this dilemma. It's the fate of a family in the West Ukrainian city of Kolymyr. The following report was made by one of our Renovabis employees in September 2010. In the house lives the married Greek Catholic priest Igor with his 4 children, aged between 16 and 23 years. At breakfast, the daughter tells that in her class there are several children who grow up in families which are disrupted because of one parent's migration to Western Europe. Inside the house, there is no photo showing the mother and wife, who is working in Italy as an elderly care nurse for 8 years now. At our request, the priest takes the photo albums. Mother, so they call her in these stories, has apparently no proper name. It's only Mother. We have to ask several times to find it out, the name. We are told that Mother is a shop assistant, immigrated illegally to earn money for the children's education. She wanted to come back 2 years ago, but she only stayed a fortnight at home in Ukraine. Then she returned to West legally this time to ensure the house renovation. The family's good living standard is only possible because of the mother's remittances. From this example you can deduce a lot, but I would like to point to the mother's job. She works as an elderly care nurse far away from home. Of course, her job brings the family many financial advantages, but money doesn't replace the presence of the human being. In a certain way it may look as a win-win situation, but it leaves sour taste. The wife and mother is missing at home the longer her absence is noticeable. There are surely more serious cases in Europe and elsewhere in the world than this one, but the phenomenon is clearly visible. Many people are forced by poverty to resign their natural intergenerational contact. Another aspect concerning the intergenerational relations to which we should pay attention, especially with Eastern Europe in our mind, is a question regarding how to deal with the tragic history of Europe in the 20th century. This is a question of dialogue, of an intergenerational dialogue, the transfer of authentic experiences, and in consequence, the becoming of collective consciousness of history. This reprocessing was very painful in Western Europe. There, where it was denied from the point of view of the young generation, it was forced. The year 1968 is the symbol for it. And I know what I'm talking about, coming from Germany and having a Jew at my side. In the communist part of Europe, reprocessing was, apart from short periods during the Khrushchev thaw and the perestroika, unwanted. No intergenerational dialogue took place. Many people were left alone with their traumas and their emotional distresses. In connection with the revolutionary changes at the end of the 80s, at the beginning of the 90s, people finally started to talk to each other in at least some countries, for example in Poland, in the Czech Republic, in the Baltic states, and a certain reprocessing could take place. However, in other countries like Albania, Belarus, Russia, the official ordered reading of the past is restraining, even suppressing, more and more the reprocessing. That the number of combatants and civilians suffered in war is decreasing facilitates the ideologization of the past. And nationalistic youth organizations help to spread this perception. Especially appalling, from my point of view, seems to be the situation in Russia. As some years ago, the Levanda Center asked in a survey, how would you like it when monuments for Stalin would be installed? 12% of the interviewed aged between 18 and 24. Yes, years answered, I would like it. and 34% said that they didn't mind. And in Albania, government shows alarmingly little interest in documenting the history of the brutal prisons and extermination camps of the world's first officially named atheistic state. That means future generations are betrayed of their history. Conclusion. Let me one more come back to the topic of the migration workers. You can't change the just described situation by more moral appeals. You have to change to improve the economic situation in these countries. Then more people would stay in their home country, and so the situation of many families would improve too. But if you look objectively at the migration streams over the past years, you will discover that approximately at least 6 million of Ukrainians live and work at the moment in Western Europe, permanently or temporarily, many of them illegally. A similar rate of migration is known of other countries in Eastern and Southeastern Europe. What can be said in the light of this report? Public and private organizations, last not least the churches, have built up information centers in order to moderate at least the worst excesses. There are projects supporting parentless children and elderly people in need in their home countries. And there are cooperation between the Caritas associations of the countries to which the people from Eastern Europe come to work. These corporations have a hand in that these workers can work legally, that they are paid adequately, and that they can return regularly to their families. For example, there is such a cooperation between the German and the Polish Caritas. By no means it mustn't become the rule that rich countries quasi buy solidarity, so done by already mentioned elderly care migration. In the poor countries, this leads to a deprivation of the intergenerational solidarity. In general, we will have to face the fact that because of the demographic change throughout Europe, the intergenerational cooperation has to be redefined. In future, we need more and new forms of intergenerational coexistence. There are things like the multi-generational houses, where old and young people live together, and a lot of new ideas. We need them badly. Many of things are still in progress, but they raise hope. Thank you very much for your attention.
Grazie, Padre Stefan.
Thank you to Father Stefan Dartmann for this very intense report that put us in the middle of the actual problems and issues, the more complex issues like the one of migration and the fall of natality. One thing that he said struck me in the future. He said there will not be enough adults to have a relationship with all the older people. So this is a very dramatic perspective. Now I give the floor to Alexander.